Good morning, everyone, to the Newport Chamber of Commerce Wake Up Newport. I'm Alberto Sandoval, Chair of the Civic Affairs Committee, and my day job's at UCI. So welcome everyone to our first in-person event Hopefully this is a trend. So welcome everybody. I'm going to turn it over to our great president and CEO, Steve Rosansky.
Well, I'm not used to not being jabbed at before I come up here. So, I know, he's sandbagging me. Good morning, everyone. I'm Steve Rosansky, President and CEO of the Newport Beach Chamber of Commerce. And what does that mean? No. So we got a great program. It's so good to be back in person, live. We've been doing Wake Up Newport by Zoom, but there's nothing like seeing people, seeing faces, and getting to meet our distinguished guests and others that do attend this meeting. So thank you all for coming out. Hope you enjoyed the program. So we have, I'm just going to introduce a few of the dignitaries that are with us this morning. So we have our councilwoman, Joy Brenner's with us. Joy. Sitting next to Joy is Jeff Herdman, former council member for Newport Beach. We also have Keith Curry, former mayor, city councilman. Keith and I served on city council together for a good long 6, 7, or 8 years, I think, yeah. Who else do we have here? Paul Watkins, he's on the board of Water Trustees. He's still here. Robin Grant with the Civil Service Board, also known as my sister. Pierce Swan with the Irvine Ranch Water District. Yeah, did you pay him to do that? We have our police chief, John Lewis. We have Orange County Deputy Sheriff, is that right? Captain. Gary Llewellyn. He's kind of the harbor department for the sheriffs here in the harbor. Paul Blank, our new harbor master. Harbor master, I think he's in line to be Commodore at BYC next year. And he's a Chamber Commodore, so he's got the triple whammy there. Great, thanks for all you guys coming. So I think I hopefully got it off. I didn't, I'm a little rusty. We haven't done this in about 1.5 years. So that being said, we do have our sponsors back. He's been with us throughout the pandemic, and but he's here live and in person. So come on up there, Tyler. Tyler Parker with First Republic Bank.
Thank you. Good morning. And I have to say it's been about 18 months since I physically stood in front of people and talked to people in person. We're thrilled to be back here again as a presenting sponsor and excited to meet more of you. I've got a couple of my colleagues here in the back we'd love to talk to. We'd love to at least introduce ourselves and see what we can do to help you out. Little hot topic from a couple weeks ago, we're going to just retouch on the personal line of credit that First Republic offers. It's a great product for us. Terms are 7 to 15 years with rates as low as 2.25% with relationship-based pricing. Really aggressive. There's a lot of great use cases. Everything from automobile purchase or refinance to unexpected purchases, weddings, and even potential minor home improvements as well. Really great opportunities there for use case. Anyhow, love to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming back in person, and we're excited to be here.
They have a branch in Corona Del Mar and one on MacArthur right across the street from our office. We have another guest here with the Library Foundation, Jerry Capel. Jerry, do you want to come up and say a couple words? The library provides this space for us in partnership with the Chamber, so we want to thank the library certainly, and thank Jerry and the foundation for supporting the library. So, Jerry.
I'm thrilled to be part of the Library Foundation. Where's Paul? Paul's still here. I know he snuck out. With the trustees of the library, our friends group, the library really is the center of culture and learning in Newport Beach, if not the entire region. Not only do we have the friends that are active in selling the books and keeping stuff moving throughout the library. But the foundation runs, we'll have 8 lectures this year for Library Live, for WITI. We're being extra cautious. We're starting them after January. By that time, the Delta variant is under control. But we also do, with UCI Health, we do the Medicine in Our Backyard series, which starts in September, and financial, also starting in September, financial literacy lectures and presentations. So I want to welcome you back to the library. Please come often. You know, a great community is defined by its cultural institutions, and the library is something that you have in Newport Beach, which is really to be proud of, and it really is a community gathering place. So welcome back, and I hope within the next 4 or 5 months I have an announcement on where you will be meeting in a couple of years.
Yeah, I don't want to give away Jerry's secret, but they're planning on building a new lecture hall here, so hopefully, if you, it's not a secret, come on, Jerry. If you have an extra $100,000 or $200,000, they are still collecting money for the lecture hall. So I think his big announcement is that they've hit the goal, right? when they hit the goal. So I think that covers all of our preliminaries here. Oh, I do want to mention, we do have these signs here today, very appropriate actually for our speaker, but we support the Newport Beach Police and Fire Department signs. They're sitting outside, so feel free to take one. They're separated, so take a stand if you needed to. But we'd love for you to take those home and display them either at your home or your workplace. So that being said, I'm going to turn it back over to my esteemed colleague. We're going to set a new tone here, a high level tone. My esteemed colleague, Alberto Sandoval.
I'm still going over that worksheet that Rush gave me. Stay tuned. We have a great speaker today. He's a dedicated public service. I'm sorry. Alex Kim. Alex Kim, let me introduce Alex Kim from Assemblywoman Connie Petrie Norris's office. Back to our esteemed speaker today, our Sheriff and Coroner, Don Barnes. Sheriff Don Barnes was elected the 13th Sheriff Coroner for Orange County in November 2018. He began his law enforcement career with Orange County Sheriff's Department in 1989. With over 30 years of service, Sheriff Barnes is well versed in public safety needs of Orange County residents. Especially in my neighborhood of Rossmore, Sheriff, thank you for protecting us. As Sheriff Don Barnes is leading initiatives aimed at reducing the prevalence of drugs in our neighborhoods, enhancing school safety, mitigating the impacts of homelessness, and advocating for the restoration of accountability to our criminal justice system. Welcome, Sheriff Barnes.
So I'm going to cover probably pretty quickly about 20 slides, and I'm going to focus on 5 initiatives that I took on when I took office 2.5 years ago in 2019. Obviously, it feels a lot longer than 2.5 years because COVID has been a long time. 2020, if you don't know, has already gone down on record as the longest decade in history. And so I don't expect you to read all these, but I'm going to cover some of the high points of what we have accomplished within the Sheriff's Department in 2.5 years and why these are important to you. And I think that's probably the most important part of this. And some things I guarantee you're going to hear for the first time that you're probably completely unaware that we do as the Sheriff's Department for countywide services, including here in Newport Beach. First initiative that I had was vigilance and protecting our community. The first thing any law enforcement agency needs to do is make sure we keep our community safe. And the 3 things that law enforcement is responsible for, outside of all the other things that we do that kind of surround it, is crime prevention, investigation of crime, and order maintenance. If you think about order maintenance, things like the protests that we dealt with over the last year, over 60 protests that the Sheriff's Department responded to during that time. My good friend John Lewis, the chief here, we were here assisting his agency during some of these protests. We have a great collaborative relationship with our municipal agencies within Orange County. The Sheriff's Department has a contract policing model that provides services to 13 cities within Orange County, with 34. The other 21 have municipal chiefs of police, and we have do a great job of collaborating laterally and make sure that we're pulling the rope the same direction. So when we deal with things like homelessness, we're not punting the problem from community to community. We're having one holistic solution to try to solve some of these social issues that we are facing. So you see a couple things here that I think is important. One thing that I did do recently was not really great, but rebrand our homeless outreach efforts within the Sheriff's Department. I have over 50 deputies that do nothing but outreach within our community for those who are at risk of either homelessness, experiencing homelessness, but oftentimes there's underlying conditions like mental health or substance use disorder or other things that occur. And some of these individuals are service resistant. They do commit other crimes around the homeless issues. It's the Behavioral Health Bureau. I have another Behavioral Health Bureau that operates within the jail specifically, and I'll cover that in just a few moments. But you see that what we've done here with this, and these people are highly trained. Everybody in my agency is getting the minimal training of crisis intervention training. That's a course, it's 12 hours. Everybody assigned to the Behavioral Health Bureau receives 40 hours. It's CIT 1, 2, and 3, in addition to other training as necessary to make sure that they have the highest level of training to be able to de-escalate, offer services, and issues like that. If you know the population we're talking about, it's a very difficult population oftentimes to break through. If somebody's experiencing mental illness, for example, and they're SPMI, severely or persistently mentally ill, these are the people you may see who are talking to themselves on the street. It takes, on average, 9 to 10 contacts just to establish trust with that individual where they might consider getting into services. It's a very repetitive environment we have to deal with. One other area you may not be aware of is our Orange County Intelligence Assessment Center. This is known as the OCIAC. There are 80 fusion centers across the nation, and this is a fusion center is started as a counter-intelligence center, basically for terrorism, counterterrorism center, after 9/11. In fact, before 9/11, there were only 3 terrorism early warning groups, known as TEWGs, in the nation. This is before 9/11. New York had one, Los Angeles had one in large areas, and guess who the third was? Little Orange County had our own. We've been in this business for over 2 decades. The Orange County Intelligence Assessment Center is one of 6 fusion centers in the state of California. We're the only county that has our own fusion center, and it is the 2nd highest producing fusion center for product in the nation, only behind New York. We're the little fusion center that could, that's how I like to refer to it. And that keeps Orange County safe. There are a lot of programs that are very, very beneficial. One of which I want to highlight at the bottom. Oh, by the way, you see at the second to the bottom, 2018 recognized as Fusion Center of the Year. It's a national recognized award. The year before that, we had received 3 of the 6 citation awards for our Fusion Center. Took half. That'd be a pretty good, that's an Oscar-nominated movie at that point. We're taking half the awards. Highly successful program. We have a faith liaison program that I'm very proud of, and this is where we deal with places of worship. We have a great relationships with all of our places of worship. I have a Sheriff's Interfaith Council, so it doesn't matter if you're a mosque, synagogue, temple, church. We have all the faith leaders together and talk about what we're going to accomplish within the Sheriff's Department. And this is an extension of that program. They field 7,100 calls per week and do a lot of training for places of worship, how to keep those places safe. If you look nationally, they are at times often a target for violence or terrorist activity. The last I will cover real quick on the first initiative is known as the SMART team. I have to be cautious that if I tell somebody that we have SMART deputies, it's an acronym. It stands for School Mobile Assessment Resource Team. It was actually funding came down through the state of California in 2000. I ran this unit many years ago. It's part of the Juvenile Justice Crime Prevention Act, and it's money brought into the county, used for specific purposes. This particular program, though, has been highlighted repeatedly for a program that should be replicated within the state. It is working with officers, investigators, and a psychologist that handles all incidents that happen on school campuses within jurisdiction. And what that means is, rather than having somebody go out and handle a call for services in a rotation, we have people highly trained to deal with juvenile intervention strategies and crime. It's complemented with Pepperdine University. They have their clinicians who take these young adults. It's aimed at getting them back on their feet before they enter the adult criminal system. The juvenile system is restorative. It's not intended to be punitive. How do you get kids to make better decisions so they don't enter the adult system? And these clinicians will take them and deal with issues like substance use disorder, violent tendencies, truancy issues, whatever it may be. And there's several ways you can get in. You can get in by a criminal violation of law, where deputies will refer them to the system, or the school can make referrals into the system as well, or parents can walk in and bring their kids into this program, which has been highly successful. So much so that a few years ago, the state of California came to me and said, we want to give you more money for your program because we think it's great. And rather than be self-serving, I took that money, and rather than put it into the sheriff's program, I replicated it in North County with Anaheim and Garden Grove and sheriffs and unincorporated areas to build that out on a much larger basis. And you don't have to be part of those communities. Anybody can get access to these programs, which has been highly successful. By the way, we have for school resource officers, if you don't know this, and this is when you really talk about what we're challenged with in law enforcement, it's really funding. Every dollar we spend in one place is a dollar not available somewhere else. You really have to pick what you're going to invest in very wisely. I know that Chief Lewis and I have numerous conversations about where do you put your money. We have 17 school resource officers in the Sheriff's Department. We invest in our school campuses for safety to make sure that they have an opportunity to go to a safe learning environment where they're not stressed out with these other challenges that oftentimes other communities face. Prevalence of drugs is a really important one for me, and there are several. Drug trafficking is on a marked increase the last several years. Methamphetamine is still the highest trafficked narcotic that's coming south of the border. All the precursors necessary to make meth are illegal to gain access to in America, so the Mexican cartels have taken on that endeavor. So we still have the highest traffic by volume is methamphetamine. Cocaine is back up on the rise the last several years. In my opinion, the most dangerous narcotic being trafficked is fentanyl. Fentanyl is 50 times more potent than heroin. It's cheaper to produce, easier to traffic, and it's coming off through our southern border and through the East Coast, through other countries in Europe and the Middle East. And most of the precursors to make those are coming from China into Mexico. This is what's important, I think, for you. If you don't know a family that's been impacted by fentanyl, it's because you don't know a family yet. Doesn't matter what your socioeconomic challenges are, your gender, your age, where you live, everybody's being equally impacted. And a lot of our young adults who are experimenting, if you will, and this means teens as well, are oftentimes buying narcotics they believe are something other than what they are. Xanax, OxyContin, oxycodone. All those pharmaceutical qualities are not in those narcotics. They are fentanyl being made south of the border, sold as something they're not, and it's just they're consuming fentanyl. So when you hear me talk about fentanyl, I'll use the term fentanyl-related deaths because kids aren't overdosing on fentanyl because they don't know they're taking it. Somebody shared this number with me of a family that had lost a child. That 3 out of 4 deaths of teens or young adults, their families find them in their bedrooms the morning after because they're gaining access to narcotics. There's been a 1,000% increase in fentanyl-related deaths over 4 or 5 years in Orange County. Just in the Sheriff's Department alone, in the 6 different narcotics programs that we run, since 2016, we have seized through either coming south of the border, up the freeway, or other avenues, over 400 pounds of pure fentanyl. So to put this in context, if you took a sugar packet, which is 1 gram, dumped it on the table, 2 granules would be a lethal dose of fentanyl. There's 500 potential lethal doses in a sugar packet equal of fentanyl. We've strived to change the law. 2016, I testified and sponsored the legislation. I've done this every year since then. In fact, Assemblywoman Connie Petrie-Norris carried a bill in the Assembly this past year. She's a tremendous supporter of public safety, as did Senator Pat Bates on the Senate side, to simply do one thing: add fentanyl trafficked by weight, the same way that heroin, methamphetamine, and cocaine is trafficked by weight for enhancements for those dealing with narcotic. It's failed every year. It's a 2-year bill this year. I know that Assemblywoman Connie Petrie-Norris will bring it back next year again. It's incredible to think that we can't get this entertained, and it's the most logical, in my opinion, legislation to be considered. Our jails, operating a nationwide best practice in jail. I'm going to tell you some things you're probably completely unaware of what's happening inside of our jails. We're not warehousing people anymore. We're offering programs, getting people back on their feet, giving them a hand up. In the 2.5 years since I took over as sheriff, we have really done a lot of things. If not for COVID-19, a lot of these programs would be fully implemented, but we had to stop some of our construction that we were undertaking. If you don't know this, I run the largest mental health hospital in Orange County. It's called the Orange County Jail. Prior to the normal population before COVID, anywhere from 1,950 to 2,000 of the inmates entrusted to my care have a daily nexus to mental health treatment. It is a pandemic that's impacting all of us. We have incorporated numerous strategies to help get people into mental health stability. On any given day before COVID, I have 100 to 120 people who are medically supervised detoxing off of alcohol or drugs. In fact, over half the population that I have has a nexus to either drug or alcohol abuse, and oftentimes both, and many of them also experiencing homelessness. So rather than just cycling through the jail, I'm looking at this as an opportunity. How do we get some of these people who routinely and repeatedly cycle through our jails into mental health stability, into sobriety, into housing upon release, and walk them out into the arms of success? If you think of the old high school guidance counselor approach, there's an inmate that comes through our jail that doesn't have somebody talk to them about what can we do for you, how can we service you, how we can provide things to help you keep stable, sober, into services, and they oftentimes walk out into the arms of a nonprofit or into some other supportive service. One thing I did when I took office, which seems somewhat maybe trivial, is I stopped middle of the night releases. So if we're coming up on a release date, in fact, I asked my staff, why do we release people at midnight? And nobody could tell me the answer. I knew the answer. And the answer was, for decades, we were so impacted by overcrowding that we needed every single bed at midnight that we need for a new person to put in that bed. We're not that crowded anymore. We have capacity. So I said, let's stop doing midnight releases and start releasing people between 8 and 10 in the morning, so they can walk in the arms of a program or a family member or somebody that can help keep them off the streets, and especially young ladies who got released in the middle of the night and had people preying upon them. And that doesn't happen anymore. I'm very proud of our staff by pivoting a little bit to provide a safe environment. These are the numbers, by the way. The blue line is our mental health cases, and the orange is our average daily population. One other thing I did, which I'm very proud of, is our Humvee unit. It stands for Housing Unit for Military Veterans. We have a sector specifically for those who have proudly served in our military and may have fallen a little short afterwards. And what we have created is an environment. It doesn't matter if you're in the Marine Corps, the Navy, the Army, the Air Force. They come back in this environment and they have this esprit de corps and this camaraderie that exists. We actually put them in camouflage jumpsuits. Hopefully none of them ever escape because we won't be able to find them. But it's a great environment. To date, we have had a 5% recidivism rate. I want to tell you that normally, in normal environments, we'll experience anywhere from a 35 to 45% recidivism rate for those who are called the frequent flyers, who routinely stay in the criminal justice system. 5% means 19 out of 20 of them aren't coming back. That's a profound success for us to experience, and that's a win for all of us. We do have a new jail construction underway. It was provided through $180 million funding through the state of California. It's just under 900 beds. 512 beds are general purpose housing, and most importantly, 384 beds are re-entry focused. And what that means is people getting ready to leave our jail system back in the community We put them in a program to saturate them with services to prepare them before they get released to be successful. This is going to come online in the first quarter of 2023. It's on target. It's in music. It's in Irvine. It's at a facility that's been there for over 50 years. We had a jail there from 1965. In fact, the community, some members of the community are not happy with the jail. They're advocates against jail construction, and that's okay. But when you say things like, why are you building a jail in the middle of a residential or proximate to residential and next to a high school? My answer is simple, I didn't. We built a high school and homes next to a jail. This jail's been there since 1965. It actually is great looking. It actually looks like a community college campus. It's very aesthetically appealing. I mentioned the Sheriff's Interfaith Council already. I'm very proud of what we did. We have we do 3 programs a year. This September, we have a consortium on mental health. A lot of the faith traditions that are represented in the Sheriff's Interfaith Council culturally have a stigma with mental health. Some of the Asian religions, Middle Eastern religions have a stigma associated with mental health. I proudly serve on WEKE as a board member. That's a multi-ethnic collaboration of community agencies aimed at bringing mental health services to these underserved community parts of our members of our community. So this is going to be in September. We have a great mental health initiative. It's aimed at training our places of worship on how to identify and deal with mental health if it exists within their congregations and bring the services back. Collaboration is great. I'm privileged to represent Orange County and sheriffs on numerous different environments. I'm actually on 47 different committees, commissions. I'm trying to reach 50. It's a joke. I'm not. 3 specifically that I think are important for you to know. I was recently named to represent on the Department of Justice has a Criminal Intelligence Coordinating Council, and it's working with DOJ partners, law enforcement nationally, on issues like the rising violent crime or drug trends south of the border. And the border is very important. In fact, if you don't know this, the border, and the media kind of gets it a little wrong. I don't know if they do it deliberately. I don't want to attack them. But if you look what's happening south of the border, nobody comes to our border without the cartels making money on it. It's a very deliberate strategy to saturate the border with some of these kids, to take 40% of CBP personnel, making them babysitters, which then leaves a very unguarded, porous border that allows them to saturate human trafficking and drug narcotics. That's the goal of the cartels. I get the humanitarian effort, and I understand the consequences of dealing with young kids, and that needs to be done. But that's a very deliberate strategy of the cartels. So we have to look at border security a little differently. We can't just have a porous border. I can tell you that we have caught, Sheriff's Department, but law enforcement. There have been people caught at the southern border who are on no-fly lists from Africa. There are bad actors trying to probably have gained access to this country. 9/11 was all about getting planes and flying into buildings. Terrorism, the threat of terrorism has changed. Now it's about domestic violent extremists, people that are being indoctrinated within our soil and spontaneously acting out against residents. We have to be able to stop people from getting into the country who might propagate that strategy. I mentioned the Criminal Intelligence Coordinating Council. I just took over as the Intelligence Commanders Group Chair for Major County Sheriffs of America. Major County Sheriffs of America, if you're unaware, is about 100 sheriffs of the 3,000 sheriffs nationally. The 100 sheriffs represent 38% of the nation's population. It's sheriffs representing populations of 500,000 or more. So we have a pretty profound impact on policy and how those are delivered, and specifically for protecting people. And the last is the HIDAs, high-intensity drug trafficking areas. There are numerous HIDA programs. There's an LA HIDA where one of the initiatives, Chief Lewis commits some of his officers to be part of our regional narcotics suppression program. It's one of the 6 narcotics programs I mentioned to you earlier that we do in the Sheriff's Department, and it's based on major drug trafficking organizations and cartels basically are bringing narcotics into and through Orange County. Lastly is maintaining a culture of integrity and professionalism. This is important to me more than anything else. We have to be the defender of our own reputation, of our agency's credibility, and we do that by policing our own. These are two different statistics you'll see here. First is use of force statistics. These are our two numbers between 19 and 20. 20 is a little bit of an outlier because of COVID. Some of the contacts that didn't occur were down. But what you see on the right is the use of force. And by the way, use of force by definition, you won't find a standardized definition of use of force within the law enforcement profession. For us, it's anything more than mere touching. If I handcuff somebody who's voluntarily being handcuffed, that's not a use of force. If I have to take that person and control them in any way, that's considered a use of force by our definition. And anything more severe than that is considered a use of force. We look at the number of interactions we have with the public and the number of uses of force we have comparatively. Let me tell you, it's a very, very, very low comparative number between uses of force. And just because there's use of force doesn't mean it was outside of policy. That's just the aggregate number of those uses of force. What I'm most proud of, and this happened actually after George Floyd, I did a lot of panel discussions about accountability and transparency. These two numbers that you see on the bottom, these are our internal affairs investigations. And keep in mind, we run the fifth largest sheriff's department in the nation, have 4,000 employees, have another 800 volunteers that fall in the same policy and performance expectations of the sheriff's department. If you see these cases that we have, just because we do an internal affairs investigation doesn't mean it was by default a founded investigation. But those that we had in 2019, 138 received discipline. In 2020, we had 147 received discipline. That could be a written reprimand to termination. And if you don't perform at my standard in this organization, I will walk you to the door until you don't get to wear this uniform anymore. That's just the way we have to police our own. What I'm most proud of, though, are the numbers on the far right. 84%, 95%. Those were the investigations that were started by our personnel recognizing conduct that they did not believe rose to the level of expectation of the department. Our people policed on our own. 95% in 2020. That's 19 out of 20 internal affairs investigations were our own staff saying, that's not okay, or we don't believe it is okay, it needs to be looked at. So it's not the public coming to us and saying, you need to do this, or we see things that are less than standard. It's our own people identifying those things and acting upon them. I just started a body-worn camera program, and to put this in comparison, a lot of agencies that have body-worn cameras or implemented them over the last several years didn't have anything. They went from nothing to body-worn. We have had an in-car camera system. An in-car camera system, have you ever seen the show Cops? It's a dash cam. We've had that since 1989. We were way ahead of the curve when it came to in-car systems. When it came to body-worn cameras, I wanted to take a methodical approach to make sure we got it right. It's a very expensive program. We only had one opportunity to get it right, and rather than spend money twice or multiple times, we did a really in-depth evaluation, 2 pilot programs testing it, checking the bandwidth, the delivery of the video, all those things that go into running a system, and most importantly, the people it takes to drive the program. A lot of agencies that went to body-worn camera didn't realize what the actual costs were going to be. Just in having people to review the video, redact it as necessary, prepare it for discovery for court. It took us actually 14 people. I had to hire 14 new people, create a division, just to manage the videos going to be created by the body-worn camera program. We just got it approved by the Board of Supervisors 2 weeks ago. We're implementing it. We'll probably be fully implemented definitely within a year. The first set of cameras are on their way to be delivered. And what's most, I think, impressive for this group, a lot of agencies that went to body-worn camera programs have a lot of reluctance and resistance within their ranks. Not me. Every one of my deputies were begging for body-worn cameras for years because we had the in-car camera system for a long time. They saw the benefits of having that video that truly captured what the encounter was. I'm not going to have any problem getting them to be compliant and accepted of the body-worn camera program. That's a lot, I think, for probably, hopefully 20 minutes. I think I hit the mark. But this is my favorite part of the day. I call it Stump the Sheriff. So if you want to ask me any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. And this is just based on the 5 initiatives. Believe me, there's a lot of other things that we do, not just within the Sheriff's Department, with the great Newport Beach Police Department working and these issues and pulling the rope the same direction. So, yes, sir.
How many officers have you lost through shootings?
How many officers total? We haven't lost an officer to a shooting in many years. I'm happy for that.
That's good.
But we have had losses over the over 100-year history of the Sheriff's Department, but not in any recent history. In fact, in Orange County, knock on if this is real wood, we haven't lost an officer in Orange County in, I think it's been 8 years. So it's the longest stretch in decades that we have had a loss. The last officer in Orange County was John Cucci in Laguna Beach, and that was 2013, I believe, when he was killed in a motorcycle accident. Yes, ma'am.
I'm a little confused about the drug thing because I don't know anything about it. How would people, if they're taking something and they don't know it's fentanyl, how is that happening and what are they taking?
Sure, so the question was, if we have people, not just young adults and teens, taking something, how do they not know what they're taking is what they're taking, and what are the impacts? So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to answer in two different ways. First, they think they're buying something that it's not. So this is going to be frightening for you to hear. They actually call it Drug Hub. You can order it up on Instagram, have it delivered to the front of your house. A child walks out and says, I'm going to meet a friend, gets a narcotics delivery, goes back into the house and consumes something, or they get access through other means. So delivery systems are very easy because of social media. And don't get me started on the dark web and what happens there between human trafficking and pedophiles sharing information and narcotics trafficking happens in the dark web, which is encrypted layered, the onion router, if you know what that is, it's encrypted communications. But the cartels aren't chemists. So I'm gonna ask you this, if you ever make chocolate chip cookies with your kids for the first time, the chocolate chip dispersion ratio is not always equal cookie to cookie. One cookie has 3, one has 13. Well, these are the cartels, they're not chemists. So some of these pills, as they're making these clandestine produced pills that are intended to look like Xanax and OxyContin, oxycodone, one will have 1/5 the amount of fentanyl, one will have 5 times the amount of fentanyl. Well, 5 times the amount of fentanyl is a lethal dose. In fact, if you don't have a tolerance to fentanyl, a skin contact or inhaling dust of fentanyl can flatline you, can just kill you. Fentanyl is a very dangerous drug. There's a new version of it called carfentanil, which is 100 times more potent than fentanyl, which is 50 times more potent than heroin. It's very dangerous. What we did, though, and what you probably are unaware of, is I run the crime lab in Orange County. I'm also the county's coroner. But in the crime lab, in 2015, we saw the first presence of fentanyl west of the Mississippi. And taking that knowledge, we put in place a naloxone program. Naloxone is a Narcan equivalent. It's a nasal spray. Law enforcement throughout Orange County deploys with that in our car because we're oftentimes the first person on scene for somebody who's being impacted negatively by narcotics, and we've saved hundreds of lives. So when you look at this comparatively and see the 1,000% increase in lives lost, that does not count the thousands of people we've saved. Not for naloxone, that number will be much, much higher than it is. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Steve McNally. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. On the
Naloxone?
Yes. Who coordinates that for the county across law enforcement, behavioral health, hospitals? Because I, as a person, can get it as well, right?
Yes.
As a pharmacy.
Yes.
So it came up at a behavioral health advisory board meeting that maybe we should figure out how much is needed and how much is it a funding, or make sure the public's aware they can get it, because if you've been touched,
Sure.
it's important to have it handy.
Yeah, the question was naloxone, who trains on it, and who's driving really the program, if I summarize that correctly. So healthcare agency trains all of our officers on the application of it. We get it obviously as an expenditure and put it in our toolbox to have available. It can be purchased privately, so somebody could buy. In fact, those who use naloxone, fentanyl on a regular basis, oftentimes the users have it with them because they will go as far as they can to the edge and then bring their friend back. Unfortunately, not really good at knowing where the edge is. Sometimes they go too far because it's just one of these party environments. But healthcare agency trains our folks. We have it regularly. I deploy it with our deputies in the field, our crime lab when they go out, because they oftentimes responded to locations where It can be when they're collecting evidence. Our coroner's office deals with overdose deaths. They have it as well, and I hate to say it, but I have it in the jail because we have a huge drug trafficking issue within the jail with people trying to bring this in. In fact, if you know AB 109, which is state prison realignment from 10 years ago, one of the little gifts that keeps on giving in AB 109 is called a flash incarceration. It's like a timeout for an adult not behaving well. Well, it doesn't take long for the criminal enterprise, the people trafficking narcotics into our correctional facilities, to realize you're going to deliberately violate and come and get a timeout, and with the intention of bringing narcotics into the jail. Believe me, these people have a system of how they operate, and so we are dealing with that. We have drug detection canines, we have naloxone up 100 to save some high jails. In fact, if I didn't have the program in the jail, we would have easily double-digit, if not triple-digit deaths within the jail because of that. We have body scanners that TSA uses, so people coming into the jail, we actually put them through a body scanner. We stopped receiving certain types of mail, cardstock, which is oftentimes saturated and dipped in liquid methamphetamine and other things. It's a big problem, and we're dealing with that. But I think the low numbers that we've experienced compared to some of my contemporaries is demonstrative that we have a pretty robust preventative program and responsive program as well within our jails. Yes, sir.
Very simply, thank you for all that you've done.
Thank you.
And number two is, what can the public do to help you?
So I appreciate the thanks, but I'll tell you, I'm a blessed man. I get to work with great people every day. It makes my job very easy. I have tremendously talented, not only people within the jail, but also here in Newport Beach and elsewhere, you have tremendously talented leaders between John Lewis and his staff. The great thing is we all are working the problem the same way. I think what I would ask of you, the question is, what can you do? The information you heard, it doesn't do any good if it's not shared. So if you came away with 2 or 3 really impactful things that you learned today, please tell people, especially regarding fentanyl. I was speaking to a group, it was actually at a drug walk, and I always talk to the young kids, and at the end I wanted to ask the parents, who can tell me what the Fourth Amendment is? Somebody yelled out, search and seizure, and I said, you're absolutely right. It's legal search and seizure, or at least search and seizure, how it's written in the Constitution, is by government based on oath or affirmation, places and things to be seized. This is important for you. The Fourth Amendment does not apply to you. Get in your kids' stuff. That's the message, right? You have to go and go through your way. And there are too many parents that want to be a friend and not enough parents that want to be a parent. That backpack is your backpack. You own that. Your kids cannot legally own things. They may be in possession of things, but go through their phone, learn things, learn how they work around you. I'm not saying that they do, but you've got to be able to outsmart your kid a little bit and know what they're doing, know who their friends are, and know what's in their bedroom, what's in their backpack, and most importantly, know what you need to be looking for. And there's sites available to tell you what paraphernalia looks like and everything else. I think one of the greatest travesties in this state is the decriminalization of marijuana. And that, I'm not picking on marijuana. There's those that are advocates and those that aren't. I'm not an advocate because I know the consequences of it. You look at Colorado, what happened, they were a few years ahead of us. Traffic fatalities increased, teen use increased, impacts on commerce was detrimental. When Colorado implemented their marijuana program, if you want to call it that, there were more marijuana storefronts than Starbucks and McDonald's combined in Colorado. It changes the fabric of communities, and it's tremendously impactful. New research is coming out. Marijuana was always sold as this panacea, right? It solves everything. Frequent, repetitive use of high levels of THC now causes psychosis. That's the new data coming out. So you have young kids saying, I have ADHD, smoke weed, and it actually causes the reverse. It's tremendously impactful. So I have a question that I saw in the back. Yes. Hi, Katrina Foley from.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah,
so
from.
This is an easy one. You won't get stuck. Can you really help us to understand your role, your statutory requirements regarding patrolling the coast and the harbors?
Sure. So we have obviously we several different things that we do. Based on the Harbors and Navigations Code, Government Code, and other codes, we have a responsibility not only within the harbors, but along the 42 miles of coast within Orange County. We patrol the 3 harbors, Sunset Harbor, Newport Beach, and also Dana Point. We have a large presence. Our main station here is in Newport Beach. Captain Llewellyn is the harbor master for the Sheriff's Department. Newport Beach has implemented its own harbor master program, but it's mostly to deal with a kind of a community relations and some other things, mooring and other things that they deal with. And we assist with that by MOU as necessary. But we have that responsibility. We also have a responsibility outside the harbor based on contract with the federal government known as Operation Stone Garden. People don't realize that we have not only a north, east, and south border, we have a western border, the Pacific Ocean. And there are bad actors that try to do things using that ocean waterway. Ponga boats, bringing in narcotics, and also human trafficking. In fact, if we were run across a Ponga boat, you could tell what the cargo was based on how many motors were on the Ponga boat. If there was one motor, it was people. If there was two motors, it was narcotics. That's how much value they put on human life, that they would run it both ways. This program is so successful that the cartels bringing cargo up via Ponga boat are now going over 100 miles offshore, and they're boarding beyond Point Magoo because we have such a profound defensive posture now. And pleasure craft. People are bringing in regular pleasure craft that might look just like a fishing boat, but it has ulterior motives, going out, meeting somebody at sea, changing cargo, and trying to drive it into the harbor as well. So we take on that mission for the federal government based on a grant program known as Operation Stone Garden. Our tactical unit, our SWAT team, actually are the operators on these boats. Commander Llewellyn's staff will captain the boat with some, they'll manage the boat, but our tactical team will actually board, and they have the ability to board craft on behalf of the federal government and do inspections. It's a great program, proud to do it. One of the 6 narcotics programs that I mentioned. But we have a great relation with Newport Beach, the harbor. 80% of the harbor is in Newport proper. But we have responsibilities here regardless of where it falls. And we do this with monies made available specific to the Sheriff's Department to be able to patrol these areas. And you get the benefit of having our presence here, which we're happy to do. Yes, sir.
Hey, Don, what are 2 or 3 things that you would like us to change to make your job easier or more efficient?
Wow, 2 or 3 things to change. Well, I think there's an educational opportunity, and this is not something that's easy, but I would love to be treated the same as every other county in California, first and foremost. If you don't know this, we receive 5 cents back on every property tax dollar that goes to Sacramento. It's the lowest in the state. If we receive just the amount equal to San Diego, it would mean $700 million more Orange County. We get treated disparately. When I mentioned our program, our fusion center, the OKAYA, I get underfunded $1.8 million to do the fusion centers in California, even though we outproduce all of them. It's just this disparity that takes place within Sacramento. I'm not trying to make it political, but we just get treated differently.
That's because the allocation of the property tax to the county, and that's your share of the county.
Yes, so that, and just I think to make the argument, we just want to be treated the same. So if you're talking to legislators or have the opportunity, really argue for just being treated fairly. Second, I think it happens here in Newport Beach routinely. I think you can say this by the sign. I've lost track of how many people who have come up to me when I'm in uniform and tell me thank you for my service. And I'll tell you that whole belief that law enforcement is broken is not true. Those in support of law enforcement is absolutely not true. Is true. We have, for every one person says they don't like us, there's probably over 100 people that praise us. We have a great system of accountability and service delivery, so I think that's very, very important. We hire from the human race. At times we fall short, but we are the only profession, honestly, on the planet that's responsible for the gatekeeper, keeping people in. So, to answer your question, thank those in uniform, whether it's law, fire, EMS, healthcare workers. Make sure they know that you appreciate them, because it's been a tough year on all of us. And lastly, I would say advocate for good legislative policy. That's probably one of the most impactful things that are making our job more difficult is policy passed at the state and at times the federal level that makes us doing our job more difficult. Read the ballot statements and what they really are. If I asked this group, who could tell me what the ballot title was for Prop 47 passing in 2014? Anybody? I know Gary can. It's a loaded question. Prop 47 was on the ballot as a Safe Communities and Schools Act. That's what it said. If you just read the ballot title and say, well, I want safe communities and safe schools, I'm voting for that. What it didn't say was it was the greatest decriminalization effort in California history. and took the two largest categories of crime that any law enforcement agency deals with, drug crime and property crime, reduced them from felonies to misdemeanors. Now that might sound like a good move for decriminalize, but you can't go to prison for a misdemeanor. The other thing is, if in 2013, if I caught you with fentanyl that is mentioned, you would go to the jail and potentially go to prison for being in possession of or being in possession of fentanyl. If I caught you in 2014 today, we write you a ticket, just like making a legal left turn. They show up in court in 30 days, and we act surprised and awed when we have this proliferation of drug addicts walking the streets because we can't take them to jail anymore because of the change in that one proposition. So it's, if any one of the things, if we had one calendar year where every one of these propositions were on the ballot, it would fail miserably. But incrementally, there's this shift to decriminalize and really aimed at keeping the state prison population down, reducing the state prison population because of lawsuits brought forth against the state of California, but to our local detriment. And a lot of people argue that, the homelessness issue isn't driven by these propositions. Well, when we dealt with the riverbed 4 years ago, I was at the tip of the spear on the riverbed. I was walking the riverbed routinely. When we closed the riverbed down, it was like the Chino State Prison Yard. There were career criminals on the riverbed that were making a living off of other people's shortcomings, drug dealing, other things. What I'm most proud about the riverbed, though, when I mentioned the use of force statistics, we addressed the riverbed and not one use of force in addressing the riverbed. And most importantly, at the end, we could not find one veteran remaining on the riverbed. We successfully got every veteran we encountered into services successfully off the riverbed, and that's a win for everybody. I don't have more time to now, but I'll take maybe one more question. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much for the super impactful information. Could you shine a little more light on human trafficking? I know I was surprised how prevalent that is to see it here in our backyard.
Sure. The question was shining the light on human trafficking, and it's kind of it's every county's dirty little secret. I can tell you that from an enforcement, going back a little bit in history, from a department, I think this speaks for all of us, not just myself, but probably Chief Lewis in Newport Beach. We stopped looking at the women who were in this sex trade as criminal law violators, as prostitutes. We started looking at them as victims. We changed, we pivoted and looked at it differently. And so that was probably the first really progressive movement in how we looked at the women involved, and oftentimes, sometimes men and young men involved in it, and started treating them as victims, going after their handlers, if you will, those trafficking them. We have a human trafficking task force, have 2 investigators do nothing but human trafficking efforts, and there's 2 different types. We have the sex trade, and we often have sometimes those coming in into servitude, because in China and other places that will be kept as basically servants, right, over time. It's very important to look at it through that lens rather than the criminal lens. Those handling them are the important people to go after, those who are trying to find access to them. I mentioned the dark web. You can go to the dark web, which is encrypted, layered websites that you can actually go and just start shopping people. That's how frightening it is. That's one thing that I've been working with the Department of Justice on before COVID, and since then, to deal with not only the dark web, but end-to-end encryption going dark. Do you know what going dark is? Going dark is encryption on cellular devices, electronic devices, but it's so encrypted that you can't gain access to it. Even with a warrant, you can't get access into electronic devices. If you remember the Blaze Bernstein homicide we had in our jurisdiction a few years ago, very impactful homicide. We had the Apple iPhones for both Blaze Bernstein and the suspect in that. I'm not going to name him, but I won't name him. He doesn't deserve to be recognized. But the person who took Blaze Bernstein's life. And we actually went to Apple and said, "Can you help us open these phones? We have warrants to get into them." And they said, "Nope, not going to help you." So we, I have a cyber crimes unit, if you don't know this, the only cyber crimes unit that's in Orange County outside the FBI. And over the course of 6 weeks, we cracked the phones. Got into the phones, found all of the information we needed to make it a hate crime against the suspect in that case, enhanced penalties for that. Apple had came to us afterwards and said, "Hey, could you tell us how you cracked those phones?" And I said, "No." So we have a really good cyber crimes unit. In fact, I'll I'll leave with this last. We had an incident, and Chief Lewis and I worked collaboratively on this, where we had somebody who had been taken through a scheme. Oftentimes happens through money transfers, and we went back. And if you don't know how money moves, obviously electronically, if you don't get it within about 24 hours, usually it's long gone overseas in some African or foreign country. We actually were brought in and worked collaboratively with Chief Lewis and his detectives, and 6 days after that money was stolen, actually located, seized it, and are working to get it back, $1.2 million. It's huge, and what we can accomplish by just working collaboratively within this county. And I'm blessed to not only be your sheriff and hopefully for a little bit longer, but to work with such great friends as John and I get to do. So I think I have run out of time. I'm getting the hook. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheriff, for spending some time with us this morning. Thank you, Supervisor Foley, for joining us this morning as well. I will turn it back to Steve. He's got some closing comments, and hopefully we'll see you next month.
Well, what a great program, what a great speaker. Thank you, Sheriff Barnes, for that very informative talk. We recorded this. It'll be on our website if you want to watch it or pass it along to somebody else and pass along some of the things that he talked about to your friends and neighbors. We have some great programs coming up. I just want to let you know about real quick. On October 18th is our next networking luncheon. We don't have the location yet. I think we're working on Red O maybe, but look for that on our, and all these events you can find on our website. You don't have to copy it down now at newportbeach.com, but that'll be, it's always the third Wednesday of the month. At our Government Affairs Committee meeting, which is still on Zoom, hopefully we'll get back to meeting in person on that as well. We have a great speaker for that. His name is Kome Ajize. He's the head executive director of Southern California Association of Governments. So if you've been hearing about arena numbers or the housing numbers here in town, it's probably the most important issue our city's facing at this moment. How do we plan for over 4,800 dwelling units, additional dwelling units here in Newport Beach? I know Councilwoman Brenner is working on that diligently, as the other council members are. And you know, if you're in Costa Mesa, it's over 11,000 units that they have to plan for. Well, all this is allocated by SCAG, Southern California Association of Governments. He's the executive director, so I want you to all come down and ask him how they can come up with these numbers, and you know, how we can handle this, and or actually not come down, it'll be on Zoom, but you can ask your questions on Zoom. That's the 19th. The next day we're gonna have our barbecue by the lake over at our offices. If you're a chamber member, you're welcome to join us from 4:30 to 6. We have a barbecue set up. I think this one, Newport Rib Company, is gonna be donating some stuff as well. So it should be a pretty good one. It's the last one of the summer. And then the week after is going to be our next Sunset Mixer at Lido House. If you remember, it's free. If you're not, there's a little bit of a charge, but if you call us first, maybe we can get you on the guest list. So definitely check that out, Lido House on the rooftop. And then we have, finally, we're going to be restarting our civic events. The Chamber does a dozen major civic events a year. So the first one coming up will be, and it's a little, well, actually, it's on time. We didn't get to do it last year, but we're going to recognize both sets from last year and this year for our Fire and Lifeguard Appreciation Dinner. It's going to be at the Hyatt Jamboree, Hyatt Newport. And it's always a great evening. It's guaranteed to sell out. I'm actually pretty close to there already. Actually, Sheldon here is one of the committee chairs, so thank you, Sheldon, for your hard work on that. And then, of course, we're going to have our 59th annual Sandcastle Building Contest in Corona Del Mar, September 26th, Sunday. You can come out with your family, your business colleagues, whatever, have a team. We have 25 plots, and it's only like $30. You get 8 t-shirts, so it's a great deal. And we have cash prizes and these great little Sandcastle trophies. So we look forward to seeing you that. I'll just put it in your brain here. Christmas Boat Parade's coming back this year, December 15th to the 19th. So, you know, make sure you're in town for that. It's always a great event. We expect to have a good turnout of the boats again this year, 5 nights out in the harbor. So that's all I have. Thank you all for coming. If you want, grab a donut or a bagel on the way out. We'll see you next month.